The summary overview of the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, and we have a lot to cover within the time frame. We usually sometimes it's said we go a little fast, but we have to explain. An overview means we really have to cover things in quite a few dimensions: overview, ground view, underview, everything, as well as show people again how this chapter relates to them in their lives and how it also connects with other chapters in the Bhagavad-Gita. So there's a lot to do, so fasten your seatbelts because we have a lot to do. All right. What we begin with first is make sure that you all have and recognize what you have. You have materials here in a handout. These we call them facilitations. They're different because the focus is on outcomes, not just on a lecture. So that's why you'll find we use a lot of things. We use slides, we use interactives, we also use handouts so that you can follow along with us in a text. And hopefully, if you have time later, you can use the handout for furthering your own study. Again, facilitation means not what the speaker may or may not know, but facilitation means that at the time the participants have completed the session, what do they know, what can they do, and what will they be? If you've taken any courses in teacher training or Rasa Mandala's programs, that's the point. What after a time period when you leave, well, what would you know that you didn't know? What skills would you have that you didn't have? And what values will have caused a change in your mindset? So those become explicit objectives. So in a facilitation, that's why we have these things, so that it's a little clearer to you what it is we're trying to do, so you're on board with us, because methodology is part of it as well as material. All right, this particular chapter, as all chapters, is very, very important. And we have had I'll begin to explain we've had a tradition of having analogy themes. Last time, if you were here, we had the theme of course, the topic was the divine and demoniac natures. So we emphasize that theme with an analogy of the human body as a boat. And we use two boats. We use the Titanic as the Asuric view of life, and we use the Jaladuta as the transcendental view of life. And that way people had some concrete connection between the chapter and something they knew of in their life. So I decided that we would try that again today. So we have two themes today. Okay, so keep these in mind because it might seem a little bit like, why are we doing this? But it actually, themes and analogies help people connect what may be philosophically abstract to something very practical, concrete, and hopefully better understand it for its application in their own lives. So our two themes, our first theme, we can go to the theme slides before we go into, because we're going to actually get into the chapter after we make a good foundation as to the themes, and you'll see why. Our first theme is going to be something very important. It's going to be Ram Setu. And we've chosen the bridge as being the theme word. And the reason we've chosen the word bridge is because today we are going to focus on bridging, connecting 3 chapters, not covering just one. We're going to connect 3 chapters in the Bhagavad-Gita that deal with the material modes of nature and how they affect us, because we are conditioned still to some degree or another, depending on our position. So the bridging will help us see in 2 ways, not only the connection in the modes from 3 chapters, but also we're going to bridge in the whole Gyan section, which begins with chapter 13 and it runs to chapter 18. We're going to bridge and see how Krishna develops philosophically Gyan in this section. Gyan may not be so interesting to some people. It's a little philosophical, and sometimes they don't like to read that section of the Gita as much. But Prabhupada made it very clear. He said, without Gyan, you cannot really get to Brahmabhuta. So this is a very important understanding to know exactly how these chapters reflect a development in realization. So we'll be following the links again in 2 ways. The 3 modes, in 3 chapters, and in the 6 chapters in Gyan, how they link. Okay? So that's the bridge analogy. Now the other analogy we're using is the satellite, the space satellite. Now the space satellite is particularly unique in this chapter because it enables us to see an overview from a position higher than aircraft. Usually we get the overview and we compare it to being in an airplane. And in an airplane we can see things not clearly in detail, but we get the big picture, which is always the way things are supposed to start. We start with the big picture. The space analogy, the space shuttle analogy, takes us even higher. But it also has the feature that it can see things that on the ground view are not visible. It can actually, because of particular kinds of cameras, it can show things that don't exist, even from an airplane or even if you're on the ground. You cannot see them. So in this case, we have the Ram Setu bridge, and we're connecting things in many ways. So these actually interconnect. That's why I'm trying to explain this so in such detail at the beginning. The satellite shows scientifically that the bridge exists. Now, of course, most of you here, I'm sure, are already the faithful. You do not have problem accepting God, Krishna, Bhagavad-Gita, Shastra, or you wouldn't be sitting here. But most of the world, as Prabhupada said, unfortunately does not have faith in Scripture. God, well, we don't know who He is if we accept that there is one even. So if we read this chapter, we see that these people have almost no hope, really. The importance of something like what we're going to do today with the bridge and Ram Setu is to show that if one really takes existing scientific evidence, for the person who's he's not a complete atheist, but he's just not sure, you can actually help him come to the level of acceptance. Prabhupada told the people in the Bhakti-Vedanta Institute, he said, they don't accept Scripture. You'll have to prove it through philosophy and science. Philosophy they can't understand really, but science they accept as being their God. So if you have scientific evidence that can actually verify what to them might be mythology, then those people who are in the middle have some hope. Our mission is to give hope to people, not to discredit them because they're not in the proper modes. Atheists, for us, if we're in a position even of madhyam, it's best to not try to waste your time. Only a very empowered person can convince the atheist. He can see evidence and he'll still go into denial. So do you sort of follow why we're using this comparison? Because the essence of this chapter is faith in the Supreme. It boils down to the one word. Unless one has faith in the Supreme, everything he does in terms of sacrifice, austerity, charity, faith, food, whatever, it's asat. Asat means false, temporary, useless, and Prabhupada goes further to say abominable. Abominable because it keeps us trapped, repeatedly dying, taking birth, suffering the 4 kleshas, the 3 kleshas, everything that goes with a material body, you all know, I'm sure. None of us escapes. Nobody escapes. So that is why we're using the comparison of the bridge and also particularly the Setu one, because it does have scientific proof that it exists. So we'll be at the end of this session, we'll be watching some brief clips on that, on what is scientifically true. So if somebody questions you, well, this is about Bhagavad-Gita, it is not Ramayana. But the point is, both of the books are accepted as being historic facts. They're historic facts. They're India's heritage, right? And if people disbelieve them, obviously they're not going to be able to advance properly, or advance at all. So we want to establish that, and it's a way for you to also deal as preachers to friends, relatives, or if you're actually out there facing most of the world, you have some ammunition to help them. Now, that's why I said we chose the satellite, because it can help us prove about the existence of the bridge. And also there's another system which has been in existence for the general use since 1980, and it's called GPS. And one of my friends here, I don't know if he's here tonight, Tyag Chaitanya. Tyag Chaitanya helped make charts years ago. I knew him in the Gurukula, and we're so honored to have him with us. He gave me this idea as we were talking about this chapter. He said, well, GPS sounds like GPI. And there's similarities there too. GPS is called a Global Positioning System. These 24 satellites, it's a constellation. You see it. These 24 satellites enable anybody who has a receiver to track himself. Where am I? Right? So GPI, this chapter is GPI. This helps us track ourselves. According to the symptoms, according to the criterion, we can see if we're predominantly falling into the modes of goodness, passion, or ignorance. Now, being a devotee means actually that you have entered into Krishna consciousness, and you're really transcendental, but at the same time, you're still not fully perfected. So you can be at times finding the modes affect you, goodness, passion, and ignorance. So one of the other series of slides we're going to show you today are the 10, this is coming from the Canto 11, what are the 10 things? This is an extension series. What are the 10 things that are the major conductors of the modes? Major. Now that's explained in the Uddhava Gita because that's an extension of the Bhagavad-Gita. So we're going to be looking at a lot of slides, 17 items in the modes, and we're going to be looking at 10 items that are the major conductors of the modes and how they affect us. And that's explained in the 11th canto. So we have a lot to see. We found that people did better in groups like this if we show them a lot of slides and give them a few basic principles to walk away with. So is everybody clear now? The two themes are the bridge and why? Yes? And the satellite concept. Okay? Because in two ways it helps us track our position, and it also helps us verify. Faith can be proven scientifically. Faith can be proven scientifically. All right? So now we are going to take out our, take a look at the handouts. Obviously we don't have enough for everybody. We limited it to about 30. So if you're sitting near someone who has one, maybe you can try to follow along. Well, just to explain what these handouts do. Right. We've changed them to being more like activity pamphlets, because people see study guides and they think, oh, this is too intimidating. I don't think I want to go to that. So this is actually different. The first part is information, and the second part is charts and activities. Okay, and they're set up that way so that you can actually reinforce the information you want to learn on the practicum. This is a practicum, so this is philosophy and the practicum. So on the cover, we try to choose a relevant picture from our books, right? So this one doesn't come out so clear, but you see here, this is the 3 divisions of faith, the painting done by our Bhakti-Vedanta artists. Well, everything is in 3s in this chapter. The modes are in 3s, so you'll see faith in the 3 modes here on the cover. On the inside, this is a feature that I've put in and we're going to focus on. These are what we call our retention objectives checklist. That means at the end of the session, my goal is to try to make sure that you have a pretty solid understanding of this. And we usually present them numerically because numbers are a handy way to go through a system, starting from 1 to 10 or whatever. People seem to remember. You can organize things alphabetically, you can organize things thematically, you can organize things on your computer numerically. Numbers are an easy way to develop what should I really remember about this chapter in terms not only of facts, we're not just facts oriented, but philosophical principles that you need to know numerically. Okay? Then we have here what we call our progressive sequence for study. It's also backed up by systems that worked. You start from the general and you go to the specific. You don't start with the specific and hope you'll figure out the general. That's what the materialists try to do. They start with the bottom and they try to figure out who's God. But you start with God, then you'll know everything else. So that's the way to work, from the top down. Now also you see objectives stated up here. Values, knowledge, skills, and values. That should be there if you're studying, or if you're presenting, if you're doing any presentation. Those of you who are teachers and preachers, you've had to take that kind of training. The rest who may not know of that, it's a good thing to know and be on board with those objectives. So we have here what we want to go through in our study guide and fill it out. You have pens and we fill them out with codes. On the back are the themes in the Bhagavad-Gita, totaling 16. And we want to circle, obviously, the 3 modes. That's 10b. Because this is all about the modes, this particular chapter. There are others that are important as well, but in this chapter it's focusing on the modes. And then at the bottom we have angles of vision. Prabhupada stressed, he said, study my books as law books and study them from many angles of vision. So that's why we have here a list of things we try to include. This booklet is made up of those things. Verse content words, where the bold face is a word that you should take note of as you study. And it also has, we have question banks, we have slides, so anything to help you reinforce what it is you need to remember. And actually studying the Shastra, we'll hear about that today, is a way to purify the mind. It's a form of purification. And regular reciting the Shastra is part of the austerity of speech. So we'll be coming to see the importance of knowing your Shastra nicely. So that goes on, and we have in these sections now, they don't show up so clearly, but the slides are in there showing the subdivisions of the chapter, so it's not so overwhelming. It's broken down. You can handle it. After that is the section called definitions. I go through the purports here, not just the sloka, and any references to other books, Bhagavatam, whatever, are in there, and any words that Prabhupada defines in a purport are there. It's like a glossary for you. It's not something we go into here. This is for your reference. This is just like a reference book. Okay. Analogies and examples, I do the same thing. I go through the purports, and wherever Prabhupada cites some kind of an example or an analogy, makes some kind of philosophical point, I list that there. I usually try to make slides for these. I didn't this time because I wanted to focus on the bigger picture, 17 items in the modes, and 10 ways the modes affect us. That one's coming from Bhagavad-Gita, and the 17 we've done ourselves. We're going from 14, 17, and 18. Many people don't know that the modes are explained that well in 17 and 18. They think it's just chapter 14, but it's not. That's just the beginning. Okay, knowledge and values checklist. Here I went through it. Before I used to just have values objectives, but I added knowledge. Because unless one has knowledge, Prabhupada says he cannot perform austerity. Austerity sticks with knowledge. You see, in India, the older people still keep the traditions. But when the younger people see it, and they don't have the philosophical basis, they give it up. So that's why Prabhupada stressed knowledge. Because even in our philosophy, if we don't have knowledge, we cannot perform an austerity. After a while, it gets to be too much. So you give it up. So that's the importance of disseminating the knowledge to others, as well as keeping up with it ourselves. That's why we're all here. We're here to actually try to understand this book. We can never fully understand this book. Okay, so those here you have, and I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you can circle. I mean, I just practically took the text, broke it up, and I just said a person should know this, he should understand that, he should realize that. I just added the words, and I took from the text, because Prabhupada's making it very clear in the purports what we need to know, do, and be. Okay? It's quite lengthy. It's like 8 sides. Don't let this scare you, but every once in a while go through it, because it's practically just dissecting a purport by sentence, by sentence, by sentence. That's the best way to understand a purport. And then we have a question bank here where we've taken the slokas, and this is fun to do. We just drop out a word or two that's important, and you can see if I know what to fill it in. Okay. All right? That's your, and you have scriptural references there at the very end. So this is your information section. And this is your practicum. So we'll be later, a little later, we'll be going through this, because this helps us orient. Charts help us orient where we are. They're called graphics organizers. They take data, which after a while, it gets to be too much of a mental load, and it turns the data into charts, so it's easier to digest. So we have some here on the Gyan section, the first page, and then on the chapter section. These are charts. And then here, I used to do these. I don't do them so much. I don't do them at all anymore, but these are mind map charts. But the icons are fun. The little icons are what we call a memory link word or a trigger word for every sloka with a cartoon. But now I've learned how to make things on my tablet, and I find this is better for big groups. And people depend on visuals on their phones all the time now, so it's a better medium. This is a little bit out of date. A little bit out of date. Not so useful, but... Okay, and then we have here the charts we're going to discuss, so we know the topic breakdowns. You have a page and you have those charts here, one with the answers and one without. So you can see if I can fill it in, if you know, well, what are the 3 divisions in chapter 17? And you'll have it in code form and you have it in picture form, so we'll do both of those. We'll follow this. This is sort of like a program guide, actually. And then we have pearl charts. The slokas are like pearls. And under each pearl, I put the memory word, and then below we drop it out. It's a little dark, but if you look carefully, you can see. That helps us go through the sections. Okay? So we'll start ahead with our statistics. And we also have at the very end, Tiag, I'm sorry, your chart came out so dark with the photocopying. But we have the color version of the chart he did on, this is coming from the Bhagavad-Gita, the 10 items that are the major conductors of the modes. And in the Bhagavad-Gita, it is stressed that is Krishna's instructing our Uddhava, and actually it's not Krishna at this point, it's the Hamsa avatar instructing the Kumaras, how one should strive for goodness. That is our key theme tonight. Everything we look at, we aim for goodness, because if we're not in the mode of goodness, then our chances keep going down, 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 down. Anything in the mode of passion or ignorance degrades. Only in the mode of goodness is that the stepping stone to pure goodness. Pure goodness. Okay, so we'll be going that, and we want you to be able to identify those 10 items. Okay? So everybody understand what's in the study guide? Gives you a preliminary run through. All right, I'm going to hold these colors up too, because this is pretty elementary, but if you see it, it helps you. The soul is originally pure, clear, right? Like this is the heart. And I love this chapter because it explains why are there so many religions if there's one God, why so many religions? Because the religions manifest according to the position of the heart in the modes. When you take birth, all of you sitting here, you took birth, at that time, whatever mode you were in, that affects your heart. And that then will manifest, it expresses itself in everything you do. The food you eat, the way you worship, the kind of austerities or charities you will perform, everything. So the idea, and then of course somebody is in the mode of goodness, the covering is not so dense, but it's still contamination, it's not pure. It goes further down in passion, and the covering becomes denser, and that person has a hard time understanding philosophy. He may not know what's right and what's wrong. He's sort of in the middle. When it gets really dark, in the mode of ignorance, is which most of the planet is headed straight into, they cannot understand it all. Very dark. Okay. So these 3 modes are represented, explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by red, yellow, blue. And it's a comparison because you mix those 3 colors as an artist, you get every color under the sun. So look at all of the varieties we have here. Everybody's a mixture of red, yellow, blue. That's what you are. But the idea is to go back to this, because this is your pure state. And this is the state at which one can worship Krishna. So those of you who are here, even if you have some contamination left, you're in the right position, because you have the pathway cleared to go to purified goodness. If you're just in the mode of goodness without devotional service, you can be trapped there. Everybody understand that point? Very important point. We're trying to go back to Visuddhisattva, pure, unalloyed devotional service. It's not easy. Once you get something dirty, it's hard to remove the spots, right? Anybody know? So, anyway. And I'm going to put these 2 here on top, this like that. They have trouble. This is safe. That's why we're stressing goodness. Okay, let's start going back now over our got so much take-home points. That's on the inside here. And you can start filling in your form. And if you watch my slate here, we'll be putting the information. Again, I'm going to this trouble because when you leave, this is something that should be in your mind. This helps you remember Krishna. Remember Bhagavad-Gita. It's not different. You all see this? We got people on all sides. All right, the first thing, we're going to go to the other page first to buy. Let's go to that. Now, they can be filling in this side, but here we have what I hope to accomplish today with you. That's my challenge. Okay, first of all, we want to know the chapter title. Now, surprisingly, many devotees, if you say to them, do you know the chapter title of 17? Maybe they do and maybe they don't. So let's do it, okay? And sometimes I use a signal. So first of all, the chapter title is we're going to call the divisions. We've got 3, right? 1, 2, 3 of what? Faith. So what's the title? I'll ask you, say it again. The divisions of faith. And it's such a wonderful chapter because it explains why we have the faith we do and why other people have different faith. A lot of people don't know why there's so many religions. This chapter will answer that question for us. Divisions of faith. So do you all know the chapter title? Okay. Did you all know it before? Was there somebody who didn't know it before? Okay, so now you know. That's important because you have to reassure yourself that I'm progressing and I want to keep progressing. I want to go back to Godhead. I don't want to just be static and not study. Okay, the next thing we need to know and be sure we know is where is it? So this is chapter what? 17, right. Very good. Everybody know that? So now you can say the divisions of faith is in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. Got that one in place? Okay. We just sort of latch things into place. You can lecture on and on and on, but unless you make sure your participants are with you, what happens is they disconnect after 5 minutes. That's been proven. They disconnect. And at the end, they'll remember 20% if they're attentive. That was in 1930. What about 2017? It's worse now. Okay, how big is this chapter? Yeah, how big is it? Hey, very good, you saw that. I put, 28 verses. Now, we always give people a backup, right? You have to have a second phone and a second stove and maybe a second car if you're rich. We give them a memory link. So if I add 1 and 7, what do I get? 8. And where do I see an 8? 28. And 28, okay. Anything. It can be silly, it can be serious. It doesn't matter. Anything that helps you. These are called mnemonics that have been used for centuries. Okay? So the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is what? Divisions of Faith. How big is it? 28. Very good. You know that now? Okay. Remember, these are basic take-home points. You're going to walk out that door and you say, I know that. I'm going to remember that. And guess what? You'll be thinking of Krishna. Hopefully. All right. Next thing we want to know. We've got that, the number of verses. What section of the Bhagavad Gita do we find this? Wow. Hey, this group is alive, huh? I think there's students coming from the... They add life, don't they? For us oldsters, we need to know that there's another generation waiting to fill in the place when we're out the exit door. Jnana Yoga. Right, that's the final section. Okay? So we're going to put Jnana Yoga, and you can put a little check mark. I know that, so please tick it in if you have a study guide. I'm sorry we don't have more, but we plan. When I make more, nobody comes, and when I don't make a lot, everybody comes, so I don't know what the answer is. Krishna plays games with us, doesn't he? All right, now we want to know how many topics Krishna will discuss in this chapter. 3. Very good. That's all you need to know right now, because you're going to learn those, right? But there are 3 topics, 1, 2, and 3. Everybody got that one? You can put a tick mark next to that if you know that there are 3 topics. Now, we're getting now into information you might not have known unless you studied Bhakti Shastri and you have a super memory. Okay? Okay, the next thing we need to know is the main absolute objective. Now I'm starting with numbers. Number 1. Last chapter, the one criterion, in chapter 16, the one criterion between demons and devotees was Shastra. That's it. Do you know Shastra and follow it? Then you're divine. Do you know Shastra or not follow it, even if you know it? You're demoniac. You don't have to walk around with red horns. That makes you demoniac. Because it's a demoniac mentality that brought us here in the first place, right? So in this chapter, the difference, the one criterion, do you have faith in God? Supreme. It ends in that. Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat. And that's where we're going to look at this video on Ram. Because you have faith, but a lot of people out there don't. People even in India, oh, you believe that stuff anymore? Come on, we're making progress. Okay. Next, the 2 designations, right? And what are they? Sat and Asat. And I love Sat because it says supreme, absolute truth. S-A-T. Okay, Sat. Now, another number 3. We've got 1, we've got 2. Let's find another number 3. What do we have to know about 3? There are 3 modes, right? Very good. That's very important. Everything in the material world is divided into those 3 modes. Goodness, and everybody in those modes, from demigods all the way down to bugs, is affected by those modes, including us. Okay, 3 modes. Okay, another 3 in this chapter. There's another 3 you should know. What's the other number 3? What do you see? Right, there's a threefold austerity. Austerity and goodness is not simple. It has 3 folds. There are 3 verses for that. And we should know that because this really affects us. Austerity of the body, austerity of the what? Speech, and austerity of the mind. So if we're trying to aim for goodness, we want to know that checklist. We've heard a lot of speakers emphasize that. This is sort of pulling the whole thing together, because you hear speaker, 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 and maybe you missed some or didn't, but this sort of tries to pull it all together for you, so you get that satellite view. All right, the next thing is the 3 symbolic words. What are those? Om Tat Sat. Right, and we want to know what they mean, because they're chanted when one is doing Vedic mantras, and they're also chanted during sacrifice. The only time we don't need to chant it is when we're chanting Hare Krishna, because Hare Krishna includes Om. We don't say Om Hare Krishna, do we? But we do say Om Keshavaya Namaha. You don't realize how much you say Om, do you? You say it 12 times if you're putting on your tilak, right? Om. So whenever the name of Vishnu is used, Om precedes it. Whenever the name of the Lord is used, Om precedes it. All right. Now, 6 items in the mode in this chapter. We're not going to cover those right now because we're going to learn 17. We've got a lot to do today. But there are 6 in this chapter. Maybe for the sake of this chapter, we'll do it. Okay? We try to make it easy. We use letters. F, the first part, F, W, F. And the bottom one is S, A, C. Sounds like sack. F, W, F? Because if you start with that, then it's easy to put the rest of the word in. These are called mnemonic skills. Remember, you have to learn skills today. We're giving you tips. We say it all the time. We say ISKCON. Do you always say International Society for Krishna Consciousness? No, it takes too long. F, W, F, and S, A, C. So these are the 6 items, because we're making a point of this. Faith. The whole chapter starts with that. Where's your faith? What mode is in? That will affect how I worship. And the next item in that first section is food. Big, big item. What you eat goes right into your mind. It affects your consciousness. What you eat, that's why we eat prasadam and hopefully cooked by someone who's a devotee. It's not really prasadam. That's the first section. Faith, worship, and food. What are the three? Faith, worship, and food. Everybody got it? Checklist. SAC. Now these are the three important items. Sacrifice is for S. Austerity, and sometimes they use the word penance, same thing. Sometimes in the text they use the word penance. And the last one is charity. And these are explained again in the 18th chapter, because it starts out with that. It starts out with that question. Well, should somebody give up austerity, sacrifice, austerity, and charity if he's renounced? What is renouncing? Does he renounce those? And Krishna says, no, never. Purifies even the great souls. So we're going to see these chapters link. Faith, worship, and food. And what's this one? Sacrifice, austerity, and charity. And you'll need to know how to do it properly. What is good charity? Just handing money to anybody on the street? No, no, no. What is a proper austerity? And how should a sacrifice be performed? If something's missing, it's not in the mode of goodness. So that's what's important in this chapter. So you know those 6 items? Okay. The next, and it goes down to bigger numbers at this point. The 6th item in the modes, and then the 10 items, and we're going to be discussing that. That's how we extend this topic. And the 17, altogether, the 17 modes in all 3. And then the 18 distinctions. That's getting really detailed. That means I know I can explain in this chapter 6 items times 3. 6 times 3 is 18. That's too much for us to handle today. Okay? All right. Now, let me clear the board. So you know again what we're covering. Now, in this section, if you've had time, or you can do it later, you should know the title. You could be able to do a quiz. This is your quiz. I know the title. I know the section. I know the size. I'm now going to learn the topics. It's very simple. We'll do that next. And then here, for each of the topics, the trigger words. Now that's getting really detailed. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to look mostly at slides and pictures. We've circled 10b. Did you circle 10b? Yes. 10b is the modes of nature. 3 modes of nature. That's your theme. That's the main theme in this chapter. Okay. Let's do our 3 topics. Abai, can you take us to the color pictures? This chapter, as I told you, has 3 topics. And they're divided. We start with numbers again. 10 verses, 12 verses, and how many? 6. How much is that up to? 28. It should work out properly. 28 slokas. And Krishna discusses these in these 3 categories. Okay? Now, we have here, you already know the code. What's FWF? Faith, worship, and foods. And now the point is you see it. Because seeing is very powerful. It's like the nerve that goes to the eye is 25 times thicker than the nerve even going to the ear. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. So that's why we've moved more to slides. It helps you remember something. I heard it, but now I see it, and now I've strengthened my retention. SAC in the 3 modes: sacrifice, austerity, and charity. Now see, when you walk out of here, I think your chances go way up of remembering this. Now in the last section, 6 slokas describing the symbolic representations of what? Om Tat Sat. Om means one thing, Tat means another thing, and Sat means another thing. Okay? Om Tat Sat. So everybody on board with that. And we color code this according to rainbow. We use systems. It's a progression. We start with red or orange, and then yellow, and then green, and then if there are more sections, I go to blue or purple or whatever, as many colors as I can figure out I need. All right, now here we have the pictures. Now the pictures give us more information. In the first picture, we see food in the 3 modes. Food in goodness, food in passion, and foods that are abominable. Okay? Faith, worship, and food. So I chose 1 because I could put all 3 in there, so I chose food because that's so important to everybody has to eat. Everybody has to eat. And what he eats will determine what he thinks and does. In the middle one, we have sacrifice, austerity, and charity. And there we have a picture of a famous story of Shiva, and he gives a boon to the wrong person. Vrikasura, right? Vrikasura is cutting his flesh. Stop, you don't have to do that. So that's an example of faith in the mode of what? Ignorance, right. Self-destruct. They start with themselves. A person in ignorance starts with destroying himself, and then he takes it out on everybody else and the environment. And that's why the planet is in trouble, because it's ruled by people in the mode of ignorance. Scary. And it's getting worse. Next, we have chanting. Om purifies all activities. So whatever we do today, we're going to end and we will all say Om Tat Sat. Because if there are any inebrities, that particular, those three words make it complete and perfect. So whatever you do, you can say Om Tat Sat. Okay. All right, so you know those? All right. And then we have the picture again, faith, worship, and food with more detail. There it is in more detail. All these slides are done progressively, okay? And some more there, chanting Om. So now you've got that in your mind? You know the three sections? All right, that's good. Okay, now what we want to do is, boy, we got so much and so much time. Let's take a look at the 17 items in the modes, the chart. Because if you know that, I mean, most people, I would like to see a show of hands. How many of you here did not know that Krishna explains 17 items in the modes? Raise your hand. Before now. You did not know that Krishna will describe the symptoms for 17. You see, that's usually most people. They maybe never sat down and counted it up. But it's important because all of these should be aimed towards goodness, goodness, goodness. I need to know them. I need to know the symptoms so I can try for that myself. Okay. Here is a code. We didn't get the pretty one. Where's the pretty pink one? That one. That's not bad, but anyway, we'll use it. All right, here's a good mnemonic. We know this one in the middle. We've done a third of the work. FWFSAC. Where's that? 17, right. And it's faith, worship, food, sacrifice, austerity. See, already you have a pretty good foundation. If you know that much about this chapter, you're miles ahead of somebody who memorized every verse. That's the problem. You can know every verse and not know the point. And that happens. Many people recite every sloka, but ask them to explain it. Prabhupada would do that. They don't know what they're talking about. Now, in the first one, this is easy. There are only 4 items in chapter 14. So there's an easy way to remember this. Because what we try to do is give you information, but present it in a way that's not difficult. Make it mind easy. The first, you see C? I'll turn it this way. C, and then you say CH, and then you say A and R, and then you see D. Okay? Now, the first one is conditioning. That's what happens when the jiva comes in contact with the material energy immediately. In trying to control the material energy, the inferior material energy, the jiva ironically becomes controlled by it. We came here trying to dominate the 3 modes, or the material energy. But the opposite happens. The inferior energy dominates the superior spiritual soul. And he's unhappy because he did the wrong thing. So the first C stands for conditioning. We're bound up. Now, how many of you heard Vaisheshika's term for studying the Bhagavad-Gita every day? He calls it Chad. Have you ever heard of that? Chad. Chapter a day. Chapter a day. So that's our memory link. Chad. CH is for characteristics. In this chapter, we see the characteristics, general, very general. A person in goodness, he's happy, he has knowledge. A person in passion, he's fruitive. A person in ignorance, he's lazy, indolent, mad. Chad. A, action. What are his actions and the results? Goodness leads to purity. Passion leads to misery. You see the same thing in food. And the last one is ignorance. It leads to madness. Look when people go mad. They don't even realize it. D stands for death. Krishna explains what happens to us. We all have to die. We don't know when, at what time, how. We don't know what our karma has in store for us. But it will come, often with a surprise. Often with a surprise. And we want to know, what have we done? Your time is up. That's your exam. So death, what mode am I in? Where will I go? Very important. In the modes of passion and ignorance, they have to go down. They have to go down. Goodness can help you elevate. But you don't even want to die in goodness. Okay? So let's try that. So now you know 4 items in chapter what? 14. You know 6 items. You know 4 and 6. You know 10 already. We're going to tackle the big one now. Chapter 18 is coming up. And chapter 18 has 7 items in the modes. Most people don't know that. And they're the subtle ones. In chapter 17, it's the gross. You can see it. You can see how a person eats. You can see how he worships. You can see how he gives charity. But in the chapter 18, it's subtle. You can't always tell. What's his understanding? What's his determination? How much knowledge does he have? I can look around the room. I don't know how much you know. Can I tell by looking at you? No. So it's the mind, the subtle level. Okay, now you see 7 items, RKAWUDH. How am I going to learn that? Well, we come up with a sentence. It's very transcendental. RK stands for Radha Krishna. What's it stand for? Radha Krishna. Because what we do, we think of a sentence, and then we change the words to what we want to remember. This is a memory trick. Radha Krishna. AW. They always wait. What do? They always wait. We have to get a little bit of Braj into this. We can't just do philosophy in Vrindavan during Kartik. You know, we have to squeeze it in a little bit. They always wait until dawn. When do they wait? Until dawn, right. Because at dawn, they have to go home. And H is a new word for you, hearkens. It's coming from Old English. It means dawn is coming. It's announcing itself. The parrots wake them up. Come on, get back to your place. Radha Krishna always wait until dawn hearkens. Okay. Here we go. Now you're going to test your memory. R is for renunciation. What's R for? And you don't have to be a sannyasi to be a sannyasi. You can be just a really sweet housewife who's totally renounced. K stands for knowledge. What's R stand for? Renunciation. And K? Knowledge. Yeah, we don't know how much you know. A stands for action. Action. Okay? And W stands for worker. What kind of a worker is he? Okay, what's R stand for? K? A? And W? A worker. Is he lazy, or is he energetic, or does he contemplate? What's his mindset? You. Understanding. Yeah, you're sitting here. I don't know how much. That's why I ask you questions. I have to know, how much did you understand? This or this, right? Understanding. What's his understanding? D is how determined is he? What's his determination? Strong, weak, 0. Understanding, D is for determination. And the last one everybody likes to know is H is for what? Happiness. If you want to be happy, go for the mode of goodness. If somebody is smiling, all you have to do is look around a room, go to the temple. Who's smiling? That person is in the mode of goodness. Simple. Simple. If they're walking around like this, take another turn. It's not going to be a nice exchange, right? You'll be the next victim. Okay? Simple. Happiness is in the mode of goodness. Not possible in passion. Not possible in ignorance. And what they take to be happiness is actually misery. So now you know 17 items, okay? Let's take a quick look at some fast slides. We'll look at the 17 slides to just hammer it in. We spend time on the codes, but the slides are pretty and they help you reinforce. So here we go. What's your first one? Okay, next one? Characteristics. There you have divine and demoniac. Okay, next one. Action and results. Yes, if I do this, I'm going to be a dog. If I do that, well, maybe I'll be this, Okay, what's the result of what I do? Everything I do has a result. Cause and effect. Every effect, right? It had a cause. You wouldn't be sitting here if your body didn't have a cause. Okay, what's next? 4. Death. Where do I go? We want to go to Krishna Loka, right? We don't want to go to the heavenly planets, or stay here, or go down. Next, number 5. Now we're into which chapter? That was chapter 4. Now we're in chapter what? 17. What's your first item? Faith. That's your cover here. You all know about that. Faith, is it faith in this, goodness, passion, or ignorance? What about the next one? Yes, that will affect how I worship. We're not down the street worshiping Goddess Kali right now. I hope. Okay, next, food. Right. Be very selective. Don't just take anything somebody hands you. Say, maybe I'll put it aside for later. You want to know what's the ingredients and who made it. And, Prabhupada said the best way to stay healthy is cook for yourself. You don't know what the other person's doing. And you're going to start doing it too if you eat what they cook. You got to be careful. Okay, next. Sacrifice. Right. Ways to perform that. Next. Austerity. There we go. Hiranyakashipu, he was ill-motivated. His austerity was meant to do harm to others. Next. Charity. Rantidev. Charity. You just can't give anything to anybody. It's very important. With mode of goodness, there's about 4 or 5 items there to make it in the mode of goodness. Okay. How about, what chapter are we in now? Hey, see, you picked it up. Good. They've got it. Yeah. Renunciation. Right. But like I say, it's not dress. Somebody can be walking around with a stick and a sannyas robe and he's not renounced at all. You don't know. It's a consciousness. Next one. 12. Knowledge. Right. Knowledge. Again, the mind. Subtle. Subtle. Next, what? Action. There they are. We're going to see how they throw these stones in the bridge. It's so cute. Cute little video. Next one. The worker. What kind of worker is he? Okay. And next one? Understanding. Yes, what's Krishna speaking Bhagavad-Gita, so we have the proper philosophical understanding. That's why the whole Gita is being said. Gita is such a valuable book. And people say it's ABC, but you'll find out they don't know ABC. They think they do. Next, determination. Who's the example of that? Dhruva. My God, 5-year-old boy, and have him stop sacrifices. We can't breathe anymore. Okay, next, happiness. Yes. So be sure when you walk around, people are going to know you're in the mode of goodness. Don't walk out of here and don't smile. If you want to really pass the acid test, you better start smiling all the time. Okay, did you have fun with that one? Good. You know the 17. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to quickly look at, we got a lot to do. It's already 6 o'clock. We're going to look at some of the sloka slides really fast and just see the trigger words by section. 3 sections? We're just going to look at pictures and trigger words. We can't go through the slokas. It's too detailed, and it's in there. They've done that all month. We're here to get the big picture and see how can we apply this to our lives. Okay, so just we see the pearls here. You've got your pearl charts. But Abhi's going to click us quickly to the verse slides. So we see pictures. Because pictures will tell it fast. First word is what? Yeah, Arjuna wants to know, well, what about the people who just imagine? It doesn't work. You can't imagine your type of faith. So Krishna is going to answer. In number 2, what's the key word?
Faith.
Faith, yes. Faith is according to the modes. Goodness, passion, ignorance. GPI, remember? That's our code, GPI. What's our position? Verse number 3. Now this is important because faith will evolve according to your heart. You start, that's what Prabhupada said, people according to the mode they're born with, they create their own situation. I want to do things this way. I want to worship this way. Gurus will do that. Prabhupada says that's not a guru. Guru means he's following sadhu and shastra. So gurus who invent anyway, that's not a guru. He has to follow shastra. So you see the different religions, they're actually deviations from the pure faith. Number 4, what's your word? Worship. Worshipping in goodness, passion, and ignorance. You'll see it varies. Next one. Yes, and then he talks about the demons. What moves them? Lust. They're impelled by lust. Okay, next verse. That's a double verse. They torture themselves and others. Next verse. And Krishna's now going to describe the distinctions in food, sacrifice, austerity, and charity. You see how it flows? You sort of know the structure, so this is not a big deal. Now we're going to go to the next color section. Oh yeah, he starts with food. Food in goodness, food in passion, food in ignorance. Easy. You know what to eat and what not to eat. You should know. Next. And happiness, right? That's in the mode of goodness. And there's a happy cook. He's blissful. He's a devotee cook. Next. What about this one? You eat this way, you're guaranteed to be miserable and sick. Next. You don't eat this way. These foods are abominable. They take you down to lower species. Next. Now we go into the next section, yellow, really fast. We'll look at those words. If you follow scripture, that's a sacrifice in goodness. Next. If you do it out of pride, it's a sacrifice in what? Passion. It's common sense. If you do it out of, next one, without 4 things. Without remuneration to the priest, without chanting, without following scriptures, and without distributing prasadam. That's why we always have prasadam for you. That's in the mode of ignorance. Next. Now, austerities of the 3 things. Here we see Prabhupada. Austerity of the body. Yeah, worshiping the Lord, the spiritual master, the superiors, being clean, non-violent. These are austerities of the body. This section has 3-fold austerity. Next one, austerity of speech. You should be truthful. It should be pleasing. It should benefit people, not agitate them. And you should recite scripture, which is all we're doing that, right? This austerity of speech today. Next, austerity of the mind. Grave, simple, not duplicitous. Satisfied. If you're dissatisfied, you transmigrate every time you're not happy. Not a good idea. And on top of that, by studying the Shastra, you see Prabhupada studying his own books, you purify the mind. Okay, next. 3-fold, he repeats it. This 3-fold austerity puts one in the mode of goodness. 3 things. Body, speech, mind. Very important. This section is so important. Austerity, next one is, in passion they want what? Honor. I do it. I want my name announced at Mangalarti. Next one. If they're foolish, we use this one again. He's a fool. He's cutting himself up. This is austerity. And now, charity. Charity should be with no expectation of return to the right person, the right place, at the right time. Next. I do it in a grudging mood. They made me give the money, but I didn't want to. Grudging. And charity to the wrong person. Now, they even have signs in a lot of countries. They have signs in some countries, don't give charity to somebody on the street. It could kill him. He'll use the money for drugs. In the old days, it might have been alcohol. Now it's drugs. Worse. Give charity to some place, and the best, safest thing is always give charity to a mission that's spreading Krishna consciousness. That's safe charity. Other charity, even if it's in goodness, you'll come back to have to collect it 4 times over. That's not smart. I give $100, I have to take a birth to collect $400. That's not smart. Okay, next. Now we're going to the green section. We have only 6 words here. You should know the meaning of these. These are Om Tat Sat. These are symbolic representations used since the time of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma. And all of the Brahmins in performing sacrifices and reciting the scriptures, they use Om Tat Sat. Okay, this is in our disciplic succession. Om represents the objective. What does it represent? Yes, what's the objective? Supreme, the goal. The goal is the supreme. Om. The next word is Tat. This represents the opposite. I'm trying to give up material existence. That's what Tat means. I want to become free of material entanglement. Sat means the absolute truth. Supreme, absolute truth. And Sat is so all-inclusive that anything done with that objective becomes Sat. So the next slide shows absolute. If you're doing a deity worship sacrifice, you, the materials, the endeavor, are Sat. Everything is Sat. You're not God, but what you're doing is Sat. Understand? It's absolute. That's why devotional service is so powerful. What you're doing right now is Sat. Now, what's the opposite? Asat. Next one. We have 2 slides for that. Anything you do without faith in the Supreme, without adherence to the scriptures, is asat. According to Krishna, it's temporary, it's useless. According to Prabhupada, it's abominable. Because it keeps you in repeated birth and death. You don't get out of the trap. Helplessly, rotating. And there are 2 good examples. This is Duryodhana saying, arrest Krishna, foolish. And the other one was Vena, born at birth, a demoniac. Didn't accept the scriptures. Okay, so you got those really fast? All right, now let's quickly take a look at the 10 items, because we're looking at slides. The 10 items that will change the modes. Ready? We're going to go to that. And this is Chag's chart. You have the list here in your little pamphlet. And it's slight variation because in the 11th, I talked with Chag Chaitanya about this, in the 11th canto, they don't mention food, they say water. So in the video that I have on this, the Bhaktivedanta Institute combines food and water, and Chag's chart shows food and water as being distinct, but that's what I followed, because we've got the chart. But the sloka actually only says water, but food is such a big one, and it's incorporated sometimes with water. So let's take a look at those items. We'll look at the slides. The 10 items that you should put in the mode of goodness. This is Uddhava-gita. The Hamsa avatar is speaking to the 4 Kumaras, and I believe that exchange starts that disciplic succession. I think that discussion is the beginning of that particular disciplic succession. Okay, where are the 10 items in the modes? Go back to the first section where you have charts. In the analogies, it would be instructional objectives. Where's your instructional objectives? You should have that folder. You don't have it? Okay, I'll get it on my tablet. So we'll have to look on the tablet. Yeah. You keep checking for it. It should be in, you have a folder, the 10 items that change the modes. This is favorites. Let's go back to that. Okay, this is a bit small. Number 1. No, I have to go back to get. Okay. Number 1 is the scriptures you study. What is it? Scriptures you study. Yeah, keep looking, Abai, because I'm sure we looked at this. I'm sure we did it. Number 2, like you study Gita, right? You study Prabhupada's books, especially because Prabhupada's commentaries make devotees. Other books and other commentaries don't necessarily make devotees. Number 2, according to Tyag's chart, is food. Food in the mode of goodness. And even be specific about that. Who made it? Under what conditions? Was it made under hygienic conditions? Is the person's consciousness? Don't think it doesn't matter. Radha Kund once told a story about in America there was a devotee cook who tried to commit suicide many times and they didn't know it. And finally he did. And 3 people in the temple started to develop suicidal tendencies. So you have to be careful. The consciousness goes right into the food. The next item is water. Now that he had that as the sloka says just water. Okay, water. It's easy. 4, your association. Your association. Who do you associate with? Obviously, you should associate with those who can help you advance spiritually. Vaishnavas. Asat Sangha, no. Lord Chaitanya said the worst thing. Just, again, you become polluted, just become near a person, the energy field goes right into your energy field. You can see that with Kirlian photography. You can see the atoms. We're not fixed bodies. Those atoms are shooting back and forth. Okay, next one is environment. And I think I also used the word place. And here, of course, a temple or a temple atmosphere in your home. Or what's your work environment like if you have to work? 6, time. What times do I do things? Now, I'm a real bad one here because my whole schedule with this whole thing is like I'm up late at night and having a harder time being up early. But the mode, here this clock is interesting. It says 4 o'clock. But the time will affect from morning to the day. The modes change. So what you do when affects you. Meditation, such a beautiful picture here. Meditate on the deity. What do you meditate on? If you want to know where your heart is, try this. Where does your mind go? Wherever your mind goes, that's where your heart is. The mind will follow the heart. So where do we want to put our heart? In Krishna. Yeah, he's there. Next one, mantras. What mantras do you chant? Hare Krishna, the mantra. And I had two pictures of beads there. Samskaras. We still have to perform samskaras. Right? And especially, people get married or they have yagyas for their homes. Samskaras are very important. And the last one is birth. Now we have 2 kinds of birth. Or if you're grihastas and you want to have children, so serious how the conditions have to, unless you want a demon for a child. What are the conditions? So this becomes a devotee who's going to go back to Godhead. And then of course, here is, I think this Yadubar, getting Gayatri, second birth. Because that's, your birth in India, they say, I'm Brahmin by birth. No, you're Brahmin by education, by second initiation. So those are the 10 items, and you have that listed in your chart, and you can fill it in. Sorry we didn't find it. Okay, so now, are we ready to go to South India? Yes. We're going to go on a pilgrimage. We have another personality here. He always does parikramas, so maybe Devananda Pandit, you can take the class to South India right now. Okay? I hope we can hear the sound. This one, I think, is one of those automatic ones, but this one talks about the real truth behind the floating stones. Okay? Okay. Can we hear it? If not? Okay, I'll try to explain. Is it Max? Okay. Okay. Let's go back. Can stop the video. Let's go back to my 3 basic slides I sent you today, the blue ones. You got to know the basics first. We're going to go to 4 slides I just sent today, theme slides, the dark blue ones. There we go. This bridge was first known as what? Nala Setu, because Nala was the engineer monkey who designed it. He was the son of Vishvakarma. Then it became known as what? Ram Setu. Right, out of affection for Ram, the people of India started to call it Ram Setu. Then sometimes it became known as just what? Setu Bandha. It connects Lanka with India. Now, why do they call it Adam's Bridge? What happened? Why Adam? Here's what happened. There was a Mohammedan many, many, many years ago when the bridge was, you could still walk on it. You could walk on the bridge until the time of Lord Chaitanya. 1480, people were still walking that bridge. A cyclone broke it, changed the water level or something. But up until 1480, you could walk, the bridge was there. Now, a Mohammedan crossed the bridge to Lanka to do penance. And he had the name Adam, which is interesting because that meant that somebody fell from the heavens, he was expelled. So, well, that's the story of Adam and Eve. They start to overlap. So when the British came, they saw Adam. Oh, that must be Adam. So now, when you talk about this bridge, what do you call it? Adam's Bridge. So when you see that name, we're talking about Ram's Bridge. Okay, it's Ram's Bridge. Okay, now let's get some facts about it. How many just learned that? Did you know that? Anybody know? Adam? Okay. Scientific evidence. We're trying to be problem preachers. The Shastras and science can corroborate the Shastra in terms of location, in terms of the ratio, and in terms of the floating stones. You can go to Rameshwar Island and see big, heavy stones floating on the water. Now, we're going to see pictures of that. Amazing, isn't it? So the location, according to the Ramayan, it's between Rameshwar Island and I think it's called Mannar Island in Sri Lanka. It's there. The ratio, according to the Shastras, it's 100 yojanas long and 10 yojanas wide. That's 1 to 10. The satellites confirm that. They say it's 35 kilometers long by 3.5 wide. Ratio 1 to 10, same. The floating stones, science cannot explain that one. They tried. They think that there's some kind of engineering skill. They won't admit that it's spiritual. They won't do it. Okay? There were how many million monkeys? 10. Yeah, Ram had the problem. How do I get these monkeys over to Lanka? I've got 10 million monkeys, and I got to get them across the water. They built the bridge in how many days? 5 days. That's fast. 35 kilometers by 3.5 width. How long ago? 1.7 million goes. This is the oldest man-made structure on the planet. And they want to build a canal through it that'll destroy it. It's a national heritage. Can we look at some of those shorter videos really fast? Yeah.
So one question comes, in Ramayana it is mentioned that 100 yojana is equal to 800 miles.
Yeah, of course that's bigger. I don't know how to explain that one. I'm just saying the ratio is the same. Okay, now can we quickly look at the showing the cartoon I want them to see the little cartoon about how the bridge was built, because you can't hear the other one so well. Quickly. It's the cartoon. I don't think that was the cartoon. No. No. The cartoon. That one. Yeah, that's it. This cartoon shows how they built the bridge. You can hear this one.
We are certain to see the layers of the bridge construction. In the bottom layer, the wood used by the Vanara for the foundation would certainly be there. Obviously, over the last soon, the wood would have solidified and become carbonaceous material. And would
They used wood
be botanical
to
base.
connect, to hold it together.
The text then speaks of the Vanara holding ropes on both sides of the bridge being constructed and the wood and the stones being piled between them. The text clearly mentions that the Vanara held ropes for many yojana to build the bridge in proper linear alignment.
They used ropes to make sure it was.
It is clear that
lined.
it was not just random throwing of stones.
Yeah, they just didn't toss it.
It took into consideration the concept of linear alignment, which is even today evident from the aerial photograph of the bridge. The distances they cover each day is also mentioned in the text. In the text, it's explicitly mentioned that the total length of the bridge was 100 yojana in length and 10 yojana in width. This is a 10:1 ratio. Today, at actual site conditions, the
These are
round
satellite
trip
pictures of the bridge.
to 35 kilometers in length by 3.5 kilometers in width. This is also a 10:1 ratio.
So this is your evidence.
After the victorious battle with Ravana, while returning with Sita to Ayodhya in the Pushpak Vimana, they fly over this bridge. Rama then points this bridge to Sita and states as to how difficult it was for them to construct and how it was only Nala, the engineer par excellence, who could execute it, and Rama calls it Nala Setu. When did this Nala Setu come to be called Adam's Bridge? The bridge was originally called Nala Setu, as we have seen. Later the people, out of their admiration and veneration for Rama, started calling it Rama Setu, and later it also got the name Setu Banda, that which joins two lands. This has been a walking bridge for many millennia. During the course of its early usage, one of the early Islamic religious leaders of Sri Lanka walked over this bridge and reached Lanka to do penance there. Since he was the early Islamic man, he was called Adam by the Sri Lankan Muslims. When the Europeans came to this part of the world, they could easily correlate to the name Adam, and they started calling it Adam's Bridge in their records, and the name stayed. In the last few decades, man-made satellites have been regularly orbiting the Earth and photographing various parts of the Earth. One such area they have photographed is the southern part of India. In this set of photographs, the bridge is also visible. It can be distinctly seen as a shallow underwater causeway connecting the two lands. These photographs do suggestively indicate it to be man-made due to its unique curvature. The opinion of many is that this could be the man-made bridge as detailed in the Ramayana text.
Over the last few minutes, we have seen with a certain clarity and a detailed understanding how this bridge is a civil engineering marvel as explained in the text. A man-made addition over a natural seaway.
Okay.
On an average,
Oh yeah, they're
this
going to show
causeway
now
is
how
about
the
3
water
meters
has
long.
covered it because of global warming.
When this bridge was built, it must have been at least about 1 meter above the deep water level. That is, when the bridge was built, the sea must have been 3 meters or 9 feet below the present day sea level. As per the World Oceanography report, a 9 feet rise in sea levels due to the melting of the polar ice caps and global warming should have occurred over 7,000 years. This helps us to date the bridge construction to about 7,000 years ago or 5,000 BCE using oceanography.
So that's not when it was built, but at least by oceanography they can say it's at least that old. It's at least that old.
Survey of India Act, Clause 4, to call this a heritage monument of India. It is a fit case to be called a civil engineering marvel of an ancient civilization.
Okay, now what we're going to do really fast is we're going to take a quick look at bridges that people have faith in this world. 10 of the most dangerous bridges in the world. This is the comparison of material faith versus spiritual faith. And they think we're crazy. Here we go.
Traveling across this vast world is getting easier
Even if you don't
every day.
hear it, you'll see it and you'll get acrophobia.
Sure, people have to get from one place to another. But looking at some of these bridges, you have to wonder if there wasn't a better decision that could have been
Danger at every step.
under consideration.
People who've crossed this bridge in Russia opened a Facebook page because they made it alive.
Royal Gorge Bridge, Colorado.
Colorado.
Up on nearly 100 years in use. The Royal Gorge Bridge was built
Look at that
in
one.
1929. Up until the turn of the new millennium,
Look at that.
this bad boy was the highest suspension bridge in the world, dangling precariously 956 feet above the Arkansas River. Dummies from across the world have flocked to
As
the
if
bridge
the world is not dangerous enough, they have to make it worse.
in a wingsuit who attempted to fly over the bridge in 2003, but ran into a pylon and was instantly killed.
Can you look at this drop?
Dead River Bridge, Siberia.
This is Siberia.
Was built across one of Russia's busiest tributaries, the Lena River. Covered in slip ice most of the year, the 6 feet wide bridge can barely fit one car at a time. The Vision River Bridge is considered so
No railings.
that simply getting across it alive is an accomplishment. Seriously, the 34 people who have done it created their own Facebook page.
34 people created a Facebook page because they made it across
Bamboo Bridge, Cambodia.
Cambodia.
Located in Kampong Cham, a city in the eastern part of Cambodia, the Bamboo Bridge is the major means of access to a nearby island in the drier seasons of the year. Even crazier, the Bamboo Bridge is rebuilt every year and is expected to hold hundreds of people at any given time. The bridge has a framework made of bamboo sticks and a carpet of several layers of canes, cut in halves extending over it, absorbing the impact of the vehicles. Would you risk a crossing?
Would you want to do that?
Captain William Moore Bridge, Alaska. Named for Captain William Moore, a pilot, prospector, packer, trader, and riverboat captain. The bridge runs 110 feet over Moore Creek Gorge.
Look at that
and
one.
an active fault line. As a result of its location, the engineers who designed the bridge only anchored one side of the thing so that in the event of a ground shift,
They anchored just half of it because of a shift it would snap it in two, so it's not anchored on the other side.
province, China.
Look at this one.
Here, the Cedar River Bridge is the current record holder for highest bridge in the world, which hangs over 1,600
Look at that.
vertigo-inducing feet above a canyon floor, connecting what amounts to 2 mountaintops. And just under a mile, the expanse between the two sides of the bridge was so long that the builders had to use a rocket to string the first
They used rockets to start the bridge. They couldn't connect the cables except by rocket.
the long way around. Hussaini Hanging Bridge, Pakistan.
Pakistan. This one's number one on some charts.
Would you like to traverse this
Are you from Pakistan?
swaying, rickety footbridge across the
Look at that.
River every day? It looks as if any of those
Every
tubes
day,
would snap
some
at
people
any
cross
moment,
this bridge.
and leaping between the broken planks is a life or death risk. Huecos Bridge, Costa Rica.
They need to read the books. They need to read Bhagavad-Gita.
Costa Rica's Central Pacific coast that, shockingly, is fit for vehicular travel.
Look at this bridge.
If crossing this rickety little bridge wasn't terrifying enough, it's also a popular hangout spot for the local wildlife.
At night, the wildlife hang out on the bridge. It's just,
Brave Man's
look at this one.
Bridge, Province, China. As if the 600-foot high over the
They put glass there so you can get the view.
made this suspension bridge out of plexiglass. It feels like you're walking on air.
Oh, Krishna, I just get dizzy looking at this one.
The fact that you simultaneously sway with the wind doesn't help matters.
Can you put a car on that? They even show a man trying to break it.
Mio Viaduct, France. Leave it to the French to do horrifying with style. Running across France's River Tarn, the Mio Viaduct runs more than 1.5 miles across a massive gorge. A cable-stayed, masted structure. The bridge is delicate, transparent.
It's transparent also.
Between columns. Its construction broke several records. It has the highest pylons in the world, the highest road bridge deck in Europe, and it superseded the Eiffel Tower as the tallest structure in France.
The highest road bridge death in Europe.
Causeway Bridge, Louisiana.
Oh,
At a
Krishna.
staggering 24 miles long, the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway Bridge owns the
28-mile long
the
bridge.
longest continuous bridge over water in the world. Its reputation for unnerving drivers heading north out of New Orleans is widespread. Though it's held up by 9,500 PEI Canada, it seems like enough. Confederation Bridge, PEI Canada.
Canada. You notice it doesn't matter where it is. Canada, Pakistan, they're all dangerous.
With